of the Pinellas County School Board on June 13th, 2023 to order. Thank you all for being here this evening. This evening we have one of our board members, Ms. Laura Hine, our vice chair. She'll be joining us via Zoom. So we're going to allow our votes this evening to reflect a 6-person vote throughout the evening. With that, this evening's invocation will be given by Father Ryan Whitley, welcome, of St. Thomas Episcopal Church. The invocation will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mrs. Cook, followed by the national anthem. Would you all please stand and remain standing until the conclusion of the national anthem. Father Whitley, would you please share the invocation?
Thank you so much for welcoming. Let us pray. Almighty God, you see your children growing up in an unsteady and confusing world. Show them and help us to model for them that your ways give more life than the ways of the world, and that following you is better than chasing after selfish goals. Bless all of our schools, that they may be lively centers for sound learning, new discovery, and the unhindered pursuit of wisdom. Grant to those who teach a steady hand and a patient, loving spirit. Grant to those who learn a mind ready to absorb and a spirit unafraid to accept new and challenging ideas. I pray also for this school board, that you may send down on them the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being and education of all students. Unite them in bonds of love and work through their struggles to accomplish your purposes here on earth. Finally, help us to remember, in the words of American literary giant Ray Bradbury, to stuff your eyes with wonder. Live as if you drop dead in 10 seconds. See the world. It's more fantastic than any dream made or paid for in factories. In God's one and holy name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red bells were singing in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Father Whitley. You may be seated. Now I'd like to introduce today's video. Last month we closed the 2022-2023 school year, and our graduating seniors, for our graduating seniors, it also marked the commencement ceremonies for the class of 2023. Let's take a look at some of the moments from our recent alum.
This is the next chapter for us, and it's a daunting one. But when you leave here, I want you to take away this one thing. Don't let that scare you, and don't let that fear stop you.
And after today, we leap through new windows of opportunity. because times certainly have changed. Many of us are scared of these changes. We've all felt the creeping anxiety that we'll have to pack our things and move on. But I want to assure you that the excitement of change can be better than the comfort in which we've rooted ourselves. Change is inevitable, and earning our diplomas will be one of the biggest and the best.
My mother and father always taught me, with perseverance and strength, I could do whatever I put my mind to. Because of them, I am who I am now, and I want to continue to make them proud.
You have earned this seat you are sitting in, and you have earned the diploma you will soon hold in your hands.
I might have not been inspired to become an engineer without my tennis coach letting me write math equations on the courts. I might have not been inspired to become a teacher in the sense of spreading my experiences and abilities without having the opportunity to teach piano. Without knowing how frustrating it is working with a solder for my robotics instructor, I would still fear failure. Without my friends, I might still lack the confidence to express myself and to value myself as a person. Out of everything I've said, that might be the most important thing, because you can't be successful unless you trust and value your own work.
So, as we move into this next chapter of our lives, let us always remember the importance of relationships. Let us be grateful for the people who have brought us to this point, and mindful of those we choose to keep with us. Congratulations, class of 2023. I wish you all the best of luck in the future. Thank you.
Well, congratulations, class of 2023. We wish you all the best. And now for our Public Information Officer, Ms. Isabel Mascarenas. She will introduce our professional and community organizations that are present with us this evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Hendrick, and staff. It is my pleasure to introduce the following representatives of community and professional organizations. From the Pinellas Classroom Teachers Association, Nancy Velarde, President. And from the Pinellas Arts for a Complete Education Coalition, Sue Castleman. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, Mr. Hendrick, are there any recommended amendments to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, there is one recommended amendment. It is item 7.5. It was posted yesterday for the public. Just a few updates to our annual appointment of administrators, and just for the board and public's knowledge, for teachers or administrators that are not on this one, they'll be on the June 27th board meeting.
Thank you. Are there any other recommended changes from the board? Seeing none. Thank you. As board chair, I find good cause to amend the agenda as described by Superintendent Hendrick. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? I have a motion by Ms. Long.
Second.
A second by Ms. Edmond. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Okay. With that, we're going to the public comments on agendas. Members of the public have 3 separate opportunities to address the board when we gather for business meetings. The first is public comment on agenda items. The second is at public hearings, most of which are policies, and the last is after our meeting when speakers may address the general business of the district. At each opportunity for public input, board members are here to listen to you. This is not a time for interaction, but the board will take your comments into consideration before it votes on these agenda items. The board is committed to a standard of civility and decorum in conducting our meetings, and this includes refraining from clapping or making audible noises during or after a speaker's comments. We appreciate you assisting us in the civil and constructive environment. Ms. Hauk, are there any speakers to the agenda items?
Yes, Madam Chair, board members, Mr. Hendrick. There are 3 speakers for agenda items. The first 2 are Ginger Brengle, speaking to item 7.40, and then Mark Clutho, speaking to 7.44 and 7.46.
Good evening. It's disappointing to see few changes in this year's reading plan and disheartening to note our achievement goal for 8th grade is set at a mere 54%. Why are we satisfied with minuscule gains when we have the ability to raise these numbers even higher? My grandpa used to say, if the fancy fly isn't working, switch back to the worm. This plan fails to mention the collaboration that should occur between teachers and school librarians and the use of library books to encourage the love of reading. The DOE template requires that programs used for reading instruction be supported by at least one study, yet we continue to use programs such as Think Circa, which does not meet strong, moderate, or promising levels of evidence. However, the IES practice guide recommends it. Guess what else the IES guide recommends? Recommendation 4 states, allowing students some choice of complementary books has a positive impact on engagement and reading comprehension. Empowering students to make selections of materials encourages ownership and responsibility in their learning. When we remind students that reading can be enjoyable, their resistance to read for academic purposes declines. We need to reconnect with our school libraries. Stop assigning tasks and duties that prevent the school librarian from collaborating with teachers and keeping the library open for students. Find other places for testing besides the library. This year, students were allowed to test all day if needed, resulting in libraries being closed more than they were open. Give librarians time to promote literacy with school-wide activities that encourage a love for reading. But enough about a love for reading. Let's talk about what really matters, test scores. Over the last decade, 21 states conducted school library impact studies. Every study proved that active library programs increase achievement scores. For example, Iowa's elementary school study revealed the highest scoring students checked out 2.5 times more books during library visits than students with lower scores. A Kansas middle school study showed that students using their libraries had higher proficiency rates ranging from 3 to 13 points in 5 tested areas. Pennsylvania's study found reading scores were better for students with library access and that Black, Hispanic, and economically disadvantaged students benefited even more. Washington State research proves students in schools with well-used libraries were more likely to graduate, their rate of 85% versus 79% for those without an active program. Knowing these results, why are we telling our reading teachers not to bring their classes to the library and not to provide time for recreational reading? Why have library visits at elementary level been cut in half? Scholastic's reading report states that 67% of students find books to read for fun from their school libraries. No other source came close to that. This means a majority of our students have no outside access to books. So instead of filling that gap, we plunk them in front of a computer screen, we cast that fancy fly, and then prepare a tale of the one that got away. Thank you.
Mark Lutho Largo, 744. Completions of buildings 1 through 10 at Tyrone Middle School. Another big mistake. And then 746, inspection reports for relocatable classrooms. An even bigger mistake. So, what happens as a result? We have headlines. Will the world we live in today still be habitable tomorrow? And Winston Churchill said, we shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us. So, just last week, we have a headline. Carbon dioxide levels climb to yet another record high. 424 parts per million, NOAA said. See, it's that old cause and effect. You make these stupid buildings, you rely on relocatables, trailers. It's absurd. We have a headline, record warmth has melted oldest, thickest Arctic ice, cause and effect. Earth is nearing the tipping point for a hot future, cause and effect. We desperately need a new electrical grid. Here's how to make it happen. Well, why do you have the grid? You're making the stupid buildings. the stupid buildings, and think about all those line losses while you're feeding your stupid buildings. Heat going up into the atmosphere. It's a doggone shame. You just keep ignoring the science. Here's another headline. Climate panel foresees big trouble as Earth warms. Cause and effect.
The next speaker is Paula Stevens, speaking to item 7.40.
Good evening. I just wanted to call some attention to the amount of testing that is done on our younger children in primary grades especially. In our district plan, it talks about that the STAR early literacy will be given 3 times a year. Of course, that's the state. That's the state testing. However, LFAC is 3 times a year and the modules are monthly, which I know that is progress monitoring to see how they're going. My concern is for the iStation. The past 3 years I've taught first grade, and this is my 25th, I just finished my 25th year of instruction in Pinellas County in elementary schools, all of which have been Title I schools. I have watched over the years as students every month have to take this ISIP test. It is time consuming for students that need focus. Some students need to be pulled in those small groups to make sure that there's no distractions. Some children are fine taking it with the whole class. My concern is the amount of instructional time that is lost from giving this assessment every month. And I don't know if there is any research indicating if every other month is okay. I'm just concerned, again, about the number of assessments that are given. The one thing I noticed that is missing on this coming fall's plan is running records. I know in past years we have given running records 3 times a year, so that's missing. So that may be one thing that is going away. That takes a lot of time. But again, just be aware of the amount of tests that you're giving, that we're demanding of our young students that aren't necessarily state mandated. Thank you.
Madam Chair, there are no more speakers for agenda items.
Thank you very much. We are going to move to our unfinished business. May I have a motion to approve item 6.1, public hearing to consider the amendment to policy 7250, naming and commemoration of district facilities. I have an approval from Ms. Cook, a motion from Ms. Cook, and a second from Ms. Edmond. Mrs. Hauk, are there any speakers for this public hearing?
No, Madam Chair, there are no speakers.
Thank you. Mr. Hendrick, would you please introduce the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the course of the last several months this year, we had the opportunity to name 2 new facilities, Pinellas High Innovation as well as Mangrove Bay Middle School. And in that discussion at workshops, the board recognized the need to update this policy. And so we're bringing this back for the second time. And Mrs. Leanna Eisen, our Director of Strategic Planning and Policy, will give the public and the board the details.
Madam Chair, board members, Mr. Hendrick, staff, and community, as discussed at the February and March board workshops and the April 11th board meeting, we're proposing these amendments to Policy 7250, naming and commemoration of district facilities. The proposed policy is expanded to include 4 sections for various types of facilities. The first section, naming of schools, is modified from naming of district facilities to naming of schools. It removes the stipulation about selecting a name within 1 year from appointing an architect. It maintains that if named for a person, the person shall have been deceased for no less than 1 year, adds the requirement of district procedures regarding naming schools, and it specifies that those procedures shall include community input. Section 2, naming components of schools, states that district procedures shall be adopted and gives examples of what we mean when we say components of schools. The third section, naming of administrative non-school facilities, is a new section. It's similar to the naming of schools in that the superintendent makes a recommendation to the board and the board votes to approve the name. The superintendent shall adopt procedures for naming these types of facilities, and that if named for a location, it should be brief and descriptive. This section is different from the naming of schools in that it does not include the specification that if named for a person, that person shall have been deceased for at least a year. And in addition to naming the facility due to a change in program or use, this section adds that the facility shall be renamed if the namesake becomes reasonably considered to negatively affect the reputation and goodwill of Pinellas County Schools and/or its school board. The last section is memorials on school board property, and that paragraph has simply moved to a different part within the policy, and based on board feedback, it changes the approval of the naming of the memorial from the board to the site administrator, similar to naming components of schools. Finally, we've added a clarification that school and facility names are permanent unless there is a change in program or use, or if the namesake becomes reasonably considered to negatively affect the reputation and goodwill of PCS or its board. In the event that a school or facility will be renamed, it is at the sole discretion of the entity that approved the original name. We recommend approving the amendments to Policy 7250, naming and commemoration of district facilities.
Thank you, Ms. Eisen. Is there any discussion from the board? Seeing none. We have a motion on the floor to approve item 6.1, the public hearing to consider the amendment to policy 7250, naming and commemoration of district facilities. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries unanimously 6-0. Thank you so much. That we are going to proceed to item 6.2. May I have a motion to approve item 6.2, the public hearing to consider the amendment to policy 9210, parent organizations? I have a motion by Mrs. Long and a second by Mrs. Cook. Mrs. Hauk, are there any speakers for this public hearing?
No, Madam Chair, there are no speakers.
No speakers. Mr. Hendrick, would you please introduce the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, just like the previous policy, this was brought to workshop and discussed here with the board, both at workshop and at a board meeting, and Mrs. Eisen will once again give the overview of this small change to policy 9210.
The policy amendments to policy 9210, parent organizations, were made in collaboration with the Pinellas County Council of PTAs in alignment with the PCC PTA bylaws. We're proposing the following substantive amendments to policy. Specifying that September 30th, it would be the deadline for the PTAs to establish themselves and provide their beginning annual materials to the principal. Clarifying that the principal and a non-signatory member of the PTA must review and sign bank statements and treasurer's reports. And we moved up the statement regarding notification to the PCC PTA of any school PTA's revocation. There is one change since first reading, and that change is changing back the requirement of 2 signatures on a check, which does align with the PCC PTA bylaws. We recommend approving these amendments for policy 9210, parent organizations.
Thank you again. Is there any discussion from board members in this policy? And we have a motion on the floor and a second to approve item 6.2, public hearing to consider the amendment to policy 9210, parent organizations. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. The motion to approve item 6.2 has passed unanimously, 6-0. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Eisen. We will move to our consent agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda as amended?
Make a motion.
A motion by Ms. Long.
Second.
And a second by Ms. Peters. All those in favor of the consent agenda as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None. The motion to adopt the consent agenda passes unanimously, 6-0. We are proceeding ahead to the non-consent items. May I have a motion to approve item 8.1, request approval to purchase 2023-2024 instructional materials. Do I have a motion?
Move approval. Second.
Move for approval by Ms. Cook and a second by Ms. Edmond. Mr. Hendrick, would you introduce the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As is required by state law, each purchase of adopted materials must come as a non-consent item, and we brought a large portion of next year's materials a few board meetings ago, but this is the follow-up with a few more materials, and our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Dan Evans, will present these. Thank you.
Thank you, board members, Mr. Hendrick and staff. We're pleased to bring forward for your consideration this evening, as Mr. Hendrick said, some additional 23-24 instructional materials. These materials will be used in the upcoming school year, and per state statute, we're bringing them forward as required as a non-consent agenda item for your consideration and approval. The materials coming before you this evening are specific to our planned expansion of our ACE courses within our high schools, our phased implementation of standards lines materials for our ESE access point classes, and the purchase of previously approved materials to support our environmental science and middle school social studies classes that we will need next year in keeping with our planned adoption cycle. As the board is aware, we amended Policy 2510 to include the requirement that formally adopted materials and those used as major tools for assisting in instruction in our core courses will come before you via non-consent. So that is why we are here tonight. We are requesting your approval, and we thank you for your consideration of these items. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any discussion from board members? No lights. Thank you, Mr. Evans. We have a motion on the floor to approve item 8.1 to purchase 2023-2024 instructional materials. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The motion to approve item 8.1 passes unanimously 6-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Evans. Next, may I have a motion to approve item 8.2, request approval of the 2023 through 2025 Youth Mental Health First Aid Agreement with the National Council for Behavioral Health, DBA National Council for Mental Wellbeing. Motion for approval by Ms. Edmond. And a second by Ms. Peters. Mr. Hendrick, would you introduce the
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. You know, each year the legislature passes laws, and sometimes, you know, there's so many you kind of lose track of which one's which and when it impacts you and those. And this was one a couple of years ago where the state required youth mental health first aid training through a specific vendor with a specific curriculum, and that every district needed to have 80% of its staff trained by July 1st of 2023. It was a very big lift, and I want to thank our student services staff for organizing and getting trainers trained, and our teachers and schools who had to find time to do this. It was a 6-hour training. Of course, our teachers were paid either during the day or if it was after hours, but just to find that time is a burden to do it for 7,000 people. And so with us today is our Managing Officer of School Psychology, Mr. Michael Calley, who is representing and is going to tell you a little bit more about this and is actually a trainer himself and has trained hundreds and hundreds of people across the district. Mr. Calley.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, school board members, Superintendent Hendrick, and staff. I am pleased to have the opportunity to highlight our ongoing effort to increase the capacity of all staff in Pinellas County Schools to recognize and respond to students' mental health needs and to build resiliency in our youth. As is often the case, our district was ahead of the curve in adopting youth mental health first aid training beginning in 2015. This positioned us to be well prepared when the Department of Education formally selected that training for the state in 2018 and subsequently created a requirement for at least 80% of staff to be trained by June 30th, 2023, and annually thereafter. In Pinellas, we have already surpassed the 80% requirement set by the department, and as of June 8th, we have 83% of staff trained in youth mental health first aid. The request before you today will provide funding for future training seats, materials, instructors, and participant stipends that will allow us to continue to meet and exceed the state requirement over the next 2 school years. I would be remiss if I failed to recognize my colleagues Lisa DiPaolo, Managing Officer of Prevention, and Donna Sicilian, Executive Director of Student Services. Lisa and Donna couldn't be here this afternoon because they're attending a statewide mental health and safety summit. They're busy working with our partners from districts and states across Florida, sharing best practices. Lisa and her team of prevention specialists and support staff have shouldered the lion's share of the responsibility to provide youth mental health first aid training and to monitor progress toward meeting our goals. Donna, as she does for all of us, has supported Lisa and her team and has championed the value of this work at every step and at every level along the way. Ultimately, however, as Superintendent Hendrick was saying, this is a collective effort of our entire school community. All of your administrative, instructional, and support staff deserve great recognition in this moment for their commitment, not only in meeting a base state requirement, but in truly embracing this as an opportunity to grow our systemic capacity to support youth, none of which would be possible without your support, which we are asking for you to continue, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cowley. Thank you. Is there any discussion from our board members? None. We're quiet this evening. We have a motion on the floor to approve item 8.2, the approval of the 2023 through 2025 Youth Mental Health First Aid Agreement with the National Council for Behavioral Health, DBA, National Council for Mental Wellbeing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion for item 8.2 passes unanimously, 6-0. And with that, that will move us along to any new business in the district. Any items from the superintendent, Mr. Hendrick?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I want to just reemphasize how great our graduations were. This is our first regular board meeting since I think it was 22 graduations and 7,000 handshakes, and I thank the board for your attendance. The video tonight was a great representation of the student speakers and the excitement of students and families for graduation. So kudos to the class of 2023. I know it's been several weeks now since those ceremonies, but it's been our first board meeting. It was a great time for our students and families. As we closed out the 2023 school year and started Summer Bridge and other things, this is also a time of year for teachers, staff, as you just heard, Donna Sicilian and her team at a state mental health summit this week, as well as the board to hear from the state and people across that lead our infrastructure across the state. So last week I had the opportunity to join with superintendents and hear from the Department of Education, hear from Attorney General Ashley Moody, and listen to how we implement all of the laws that have been passed in the legislature. And just as a reminder for the board and the public, we're in this weird position every year where laws get passed. Some of them are immediately, some of them are July 1st, some of them are October 1st, and then we also have to wait for the state board to make regulations and give us some direction of how to implement that. So for any of the laws that have been passed, we immediately go into compliance when those dates come along, and then we bring our board policies up to speed with those, even if we have to wait for a little more direction with the state. The good news I heard last week is they heard from superintendents and school boards across the state that waiting until September and October and December for these regulations is not good. It needs to be sooner. So in July, the state board will be considering 17 new regulations that go along with those newly passed laws. The public can comment on those online and participate in the state board meeting to do that. But nonetheless, in July at our workshop, we'll be bringing you our policy suggested updates, as well as have Megan Fay there, who's been giving you updates from Tallahassee, to continue to show you how we're implementing those new laws, some of which will require policies, but most of which just require practice changes. But know that we are continually implementing those as we do, like we just heard about mental health this evening. Although the school year has ended, our students are still making us proud, and as you likely have heard, student Dev Shah, an 8th grader at Morgan Fitzgerald Middle School, soon to be a 9th grader at Largo High School, won the Scripps National Spelling Bee and made us all proud in doing so. Dev was a champion, spelling his final word, Samophile. Let's all spell it quickly. Go ahead. I didn't hear that. Okay. P-S-A-M-M-O-P-H-I-L-E. Yes, I had to look at my notes. It was the 15th round of the competition. As you probably heard in some of the news reports and stories, he started with preparing in 3rd grade. He asked his middle school principal to host spelling bee competitions, which she did, and it led to him participating in the National Spelling Bee 3 times and being the champion. I just happened to speak to his father just a few hours ago and asked, how's he doing? And has it slowed down a little bit? And he said, well, we had planned to take 5 days off of work. It ended up having to be 10 because we had to go to New York City and the White House and places in between. He said he's got Fox News this afternoon, CBS in the morning, and 3 more appointments tomorrow afternoon. I asked if he was tired yet, and he said no, he's loving it. He's a 14-year-old boy, he's eating it up. But we will be bringing him before the board to recognize him in the coming weeks, as we did all of our other students at the board recognition, and we have a couple more to bring you. We want to congratulate Dev for his great accomplishment and the great honor he has brought to our school district for this great award. And speaking of great finishes, our students from Eliza Nelson Elementary School finished second in the World Finals of the Odyssey of the Mind competition in late May. They traveled to Michigan to do so, competed against teams from all over the world. And they had to identify challenges and think creatively to solve problems. And we'll be bringing them to you as well to honor their great finish in the World Championships. One of our Palm Harbor University students, Charlie Lane, was recently awarded the Best Performance by an Actor at the regional competition for the National High School Musical Theater Awards at the Straz Center. He'll represent the Straz in New York City later this month at a Broadway theater for these National Jimmy Awards. They're called the National Musical Theater Awards. He was also a finalist at the Walker's Rising Stars a few weeks ago as well. I want to commend so many organizations and groups who have given scholarships to our students and just highlight a few that are either new or maybe just went above and beyond. And one of those was a ceremony I attended with the Woodson Warrior African American History Museum. They've been doing this now for 4 years. Every student who attends our schools gets at least a $5,000 scholarship. They honored 19 graduates. They bring back every student who has received year after year for a luncheon. Several of them now have graduated college and are out and working, many of which are working here in Pinellas County in different places. And so congratulations to those scholarship winners. And recently, National Football League star Isaiah Wynn, who graduated from Lakewood High School, established a scholarship program through the Education Foundation foundation called Win with Win Scholarship Program. He's awarding $20,000 a year, and this year students from Boca Ciega High School, Eastlake, Gibbs, and Lakewood won. And recently recognized not a student, but an employee, sort of Pinellas County Schools, was School Resource Officer Grace Albritton, who works for St. Petersburg Police Department, but is the School Resource Officer at Gibbs High School. She was recognized on June 5th as one of 16 officers from across the country by Attorney General Merrick Garland in a ceremony in Washington, D.C., for her work to support students at Gibbs High School. We've seen her a little bit before through the boutique she's created at school with school supplies, clothing, and shoes, as well as sponsored a number of the school's clubs, including the fishing club. We want to thank Officer Albritton and all of our SROs for the work that they do each and every day. Even though it's summertime, we have lots going on and some upcoming events and things I want to highlight. Tomorrow, we have a Pinellas County Schools Job Fair, June 14th, at Pinellas Technical College in St. Petersburg. Bus drivers, food nutrition staff, painters, electricians, almost every facet of the organization. Walk-ins are welcome. More information can be found on our webpage. Of course, Summer Bridge is underway and going well. We have over 12,000 students in our elementary and middle school Summer Bridge programs and several more thousand in credit recovery programs in middle school and high school. Lots of great things going on in our schools already. Some of those things that we showcased with the board with some of the federal stimulus money, like those National Inventor Hall of Fame STEM kits kids are already doing. It's a project week by week by week. They're really excited about them. I visited 2 of our sites today and got to see our book buses in action, the free books that students get who attend Summer Bridge. And we want to thank the Juvenile Welfare Board for their partnership with the book buses. And all of those credit recovery places are going on. And just a reminder for our students in high school who still need a passing score on the reading or math test, the ACT on July 15th will be offered. The summer camp programs have also started, although most of them are in July. The Ignite Arts Camp is going on now for 2 weeks at Gibbs High School for students from across the district. And we have dozens and dozens of camps coming in July. Over 5,000 students registered for those academic and fun camps, including things like civics and science, movie making, mural making, how to fix your car, bake a cake, and everything in between. So check our website out for those. There's also a couple of other opportunities for students to engage in families. There's a Family Fun Success Quest. You can find out more at pcsb.org/familyfun. Just a competition that parents can do from anywhere across the world, or certainly here in Pinellas County, and compete for prizes with other families, and lots of digital success competitions that you can also participate in. And last, in terms of updates, just a reminder to families that our ESE parent survey is currently underway. It's done each year by the Florida Department of Education. It closes out on June 30th, and we always like participation from our families and giving us feedback. And as I've done at each meeting, I want to honor one of our employees as the superintendent standout in recognition for core values. And this meeting is Raquel Perez Russo. She's a recruiter in our Human Resources Services Department, does a great job recruiting, but in particular, recently, she was recognized by a colleague for her great efforts to help in recruiting one of our director positions. She went to extensive measures to identify any and all recruiting and advertising platforms, and after 3 unsuccessful postings with little response, Her efforts resulted in 45 applications, 14 candidates we interviewed, and found an extremely qualified candidate who's now working for Pinellas County and doing a great job. I know not only this individual who nominated her, but many more can attest to Ms. Perez Russo's efforts in recruiting employees to come to Pinellas County Schools. So thank you to her and all of our employees, thousands of which are still working today in Summer Bridge and other places, for their efforts each and every day. That's my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hendrick. Mr. Kapersky, are there any items to be introduced by the school board attorney?
I have no items. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Do we have any items to be introduced by the board? Oh, Ms. Cook is the first one. First one.
There you go. The first thing that I want to do is to thank Mr. Hendrick and staff for the amount of time that you take to prepare our workshops and then to spend the time working with us and talking with us and giving us the opportunity to really dig into some of these things. It may have appeared tonight that we just passed things and passed things and passed things, but we had talked about all of these. And so this is not happening everywhere, but it certainly helps us make good decisions and really understand what we are voting for or what we are talking about that maybe does not need to come to us quite yet. So I want to thank you and all of the staff, but Ms. Woodford, you as well. And poor Mr. Kapersky has to sit there and make sure that we're all staying legal and everything's above board. But we do appreciate it, and I know it's no small task, and it takes a lot of time, so they're working double time afterwards. So thank you very much. I also want to let everybody know and congratulate Mr. Hendrick at the Florida School Boards Association General Conference. They had an evening prior to the conference for the Evening of Excellence, and it was excellence in education. And Mr. Hendrick, with his first year of being superintendent, was honored as an outstanding superintendent in the area of leadership. So we have excellence in education and excellence in leadership right here in Mr. Hendrick. So thank you very much and congratulations. The other thing, just a small one, small part of my report, is to congratulate our own Caprice Edmond, who has been elected the secretary for the Greater Florida Consortium of School Boards. So she is well on her way to becoming president of the consortium, which Mr. Smith, you'll be glad to have that back, won't you? But anyway, so I want to congratulate you and let everybody know that she is representing us well on the consortium. So, and with that, thank you very much, and I am finished.
Thank you, Mrs. Cook. Mrs. Long, you had your light.
Yes. We had our first calendar committee meeting last Thursday. I'm going to bring the calendars to the workshop this coming June 27th, and then I report back on the 28th. This year we are looking at the 23-24, boy, that's hard to believe, calendar, and the 24-25, because a lot of parents, their work and vacation is from January to December. So if we can get the calendars out earlier, then they can plan vacations. So I'm going to bring those out, and I'm going to have the forms for us all to look at, and you can give input. But it's looking like a pretty good calendar. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other board members? Ms. Peters?
Thank you, Ms. Kane. I want to echo some of Ms. Cook's statements about our district and how this meeting went very quickly. I emailed a ton of questions. I made phone calls. I talked to a lot of people to get a lot of questions answered with my first year as school board member, because there was a lot in this agenda. And I just want to thank our staff, everybody that answered all my questions and continues to help and continues to not just answer my questions, but what else do you need? So we have a great leadership, we have a great district, and I'm proud to be a part of this. So thank you to everybody who helps all of us do this job so that these board meetings go very seamlessly. Thank you.
All right, that's all the lights that I see. Is there anything else we need to add? I'm seeing nothing.
Mrs. Kane, I'd like to share some thoughts.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Hine. I don't have that computer in front of me, so I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. First, I just wanted to thank Mr. Hendrick for highlighting so many of the great successes that we had across our county this year. Certainly the graduations and the celebrations demonstrated what we do well every day and all year long, and certainly inspired me immensely. I did want to make a comment on two topics that were on our agenda tonight, and we heard a little bit about in some remarks. First, on the reading plan, I appreciate what Mrs. Bringle said about our libraries and about our 8th grade reading goals, feeling like those could be higher, and Mrs. Stevens' comments on the testing in our younger grades. It's brutal to see 54% at or above proficiency as a goal. And yes, I know we do well compared to other large districts in the state, though I also know that everybody wants to do much better. We had a good conversation in the recent workshop around reading and around the shift in reading curriculum in Pinellas County Schools that happened about 4 years ago. I've also appreciated the conversation with our early grade reading specialists. From what I understand, we made a pretty significant shift 4 years ago, which means that students that just finished 4th grade would have had those new methods in kindergarten. So I look forward to seeing what unfolds over the years as far as success from that shift, and also feedback from our teachers as they continue to implement these new methods. I certainly support anything we can do to get our students enjoying our libraries and learning from our librarians. I know I have a much better success rate when my elementary age children go into their library and select a book themselves, as opposed to when I'm saying, here, try this. So I certainly support those opportunities. I did want to mention, I know mental health was also discussed tonight. I've heard from our county commissioners that they will soon be making public what's called the coordinated access model, which is a phone number that anyone in our county, children, adults, teachers, anybody, anywhere can call when they have needs with mental health access, and that it's more of a warm handoff with follow-up as opposed to you just leave a message somewhere and maybe never hear from someone. So I'm looking forward to them sharing that information with us, and then our being able to share it with our school community as well. And then I know we typically in July, our July workshop, have mental health discussion, and I'm looking forward to that information and discussion as well. So I just wanted to mention those couple things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Hine. Before we adjourn the meeting, I just want to say I want to wish the best of luck to all of our graduates. After looking at the video, it really is an emotional time for so many throughout our district, and parents and families as they start packing up and sending those college students off. It can be an emotional summer, and it's really a journey to the next phase of life for so many, and even our younger students as they continue on in their experience throughout school every year. They do it once. Every year is special, and every year at the end of the school year, it's a little bit of an emotional letdown, and then we get to be reborn through the summer, reflect on the year past, and move forward into the new journey ahead. And I look forward to that as a school board member. Throughout the summer, we get the opportunity to work on strategic plan, reflect upon what's gone on this year, reflect on the good and maybe the things we need to work on, and push forward to a new beginning. And so I want to wish all of our graduates the absolute best. We couldn't be prouder that they've walked the stage, they've completed it. They've completed that part of their journey to move on to the next most exciting piece, wherever their life takes them. And we wish them all the best and their families. And so I want to make sure that it feels like sort of the end of the school year still, even though it is already summer. I really feel like we start the new in July. So it's still the end for a lot of parents. And so I want to wish them all the best as we wrap it up. And hopefully, reconvene, start the new really in July. So with that, thank you all so much for being here this evening. With that, we're going to adjourn our meeting. But before we perform our board meeting evaluation on our agenda, we will adjourn and move to the public participation. So with that, we are adjourned for this evening. We'd like to now move to our public comment on general business of the district. Please note that the views and comments of our public speakers are their own and not endorsed nor sponsored by the school board or district. We cannot ensure the accuracy of the statements made, but will review the concerns that are raised and take appropriate action, which may include clarifications or the referral of our speakers to the proper staff members for assistance. The board is committed to a standard of civility and decorum in conducting our meetings. This includes refraining from clapping or making audible noises during or after a speaker's comments in respect to them and also their time. We appreciate you assisting us in maintaining a civil and constructive environment. Additionally, please note that although board members or the Superintendent Hendrick may leave our dais briefly, there are speakers in our back room and they will continue to hear all of your comments. So thank you very much. Mrs. Hauk, could you please introduce our speakers?
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members, Mr. Hendrick. We have 10 speakers this evening. The first two are Ginger Brengle and Nancy Velarde.
Hello again. Most of your school librarians have a master's degree in library science, which means you are paying them at the master's salary rate. That's a high price to pay for someone who simply checks out laptops and proctors tests all year. Why are librarians spending an excessive amount of time on this entry-level work when we should be given time to do these things instead? Are you ready? Curate a collection of materials that reflect student and faculty needs. Create a safe, calm space for students to meet with their friends. Teach students how to search the internet efficiently and effectively. Hold reading contests with fabulous prizes. Provide resources for student school projects. Compete in the battle of the books. Match reading materials to a student's learning style. Help teachers locate resources that align with curriculum and standards. Assist students with the homework and class assignments. Create a place where students can use their imagination. Instruct students how to synthesize information from diverse perspectives. Host special programs and guest speakers. Provide a place to study without grades. Provide a place where the digital divide doesn't exist. Teach students how to construct and defend arguments. Provide opportunities for student leadership. Create a space where our school culture is fostered and thrives. Instruct students on the implications of their digital footprint. Model how to correctly share information with others. Host author visits. Be a knowledgeable, interested adult with whom to discuss books. Teach students how to evaluate information. Share the latest research studies with faculty. Do read-alouds and story time. Model how to use online databases. Be a conduit of information for the entire school. Instruct students how to use social media safely and responsibly. Provide a connection between the outside world and the classroom. Instruct all stakeholders how to respect intellectual property. Hold book fairs. Facilitate interlibrary loans. Prepare students for college and the workforce. Provide the ability to experiment and master new technologies. Be a program that always differentiates learning. Create book trailers and hold book talks. Give one-on-one instruction, assist with project-based learning, help students develop personal productivity traits such as time management, provide relevant resources that broaden global perspectives, create summer reading lists and programs, sponsor a book club, collaborate with faculty on school-wide reading initiatives, sponsor the morning show, visit classrooms for instruction or mobile checkouts, train library assistants in real-world office skills, be a reference on a student's first job application, provide makerspace to spark imagination, curate the best ebooks so students will never be without a book to read, provide jigsaw puzzles and board games that encourage teamwork and socializing, and be that cheerleader for every club, sport, event, and every student who participates in those. This is just a sampling of how our dollars should be spent. Thank you.
Good evening. For years, PCTA has attempted to negotiate a universal, transparent system of reporting violent student incidents in the classroom. We've been consistently refused, and I am very curious about why. Why wouldn't we take every possible action to assure the safety of our educators and students in our classrooms? Why, when other districts have discovered the benefits of a universal system, do we continue to have each school develop their own system, many of which do not provide the information to the teachers and support staff as the team responsible for educating those students? Why don't we even have a universal referral form for all to use? We have had conversations with administrative leadership who agree with the necessity of instituting this process we have recommended. Yet, with the recent denial of our grievance on behalf of our member who was severely injured by an enraged student to the point where he nearly lost his eye, and all of our educators who have sustained graphic attacks on our campuses, we are still no closer to implementing this obvious improvement to our system. Because of the randomness of the current slapdash methods of reporting incidents, we have seen a dangerous uptick in educator assaults, many of which could have been prevented by providing access to a history of students' violent behavior. It has also been reported to us by many educators that referrals are not being processed in a timely manner, teacher input is being ignored, and sometimes they are not processed at all. Violent behavior in children needs to be addressed at the youngest age possible. Most of the time, it's brought on by some form of trauma in the child's life. And the sooner those issues are addressed by the appropriate mental health providers, the higher the chances of resolving the problem and assuring that the child has a successful future, not only in our schools, but later in life as well. We're in the business of helping children, just as it's our responsibility to review all of the available testing data to give each student the best opportunity for success. It's also our responsibility to identify as early as possible a problem that could one day destroy a child's life or someone else's. Parents pull their children from public schools for two main reasons, and will continue to do so in the upcoming competitive environment. One, when there is no certified, highly qualified teacher in the classroom, and two, when violence is worsening and there's no remedy to correct it. If we don't act quickly, educators will leave rather than be abused in their classrooms, and our children will not get the help that they need. We cannot afford to ignore this growing trend any longer. Please, I beg you, sit down with us and create a universal system that will protect educators and students and assure a brighter future for our most troubled children. Thank you.
The next two speakers are Janet Cunningham and Mark Clutho.
Good evening, board members, Mr. Hendrick. My name is Janet Cunningham, and I teach at Calvin Hunsinger School. Most of you had an opportunity to visit my school over the last several years, and those who haven't, I invite you to do so. I work with ESE students that have been put in my school due to violent behavior, unpredictable behavior, and behaviors that do not work at the traditional schools. I want to take time to explain how the discipline impacts staff morale and support morale with the students that we have. As an ESE teacher, specifically in EBD, emotional behavioral disorders, I recognize that at times we will work with these students that are dangerous and violent. And I love my students. But the discipline needs to be consistent across the board, including our ESE students. Staff is getting assaulted. That staff includes our bus staff, our support staff. In my school, teachers last year were punched, bitten, kicked, hit in the back of the head, and choked. We had bloodied noses, and we had people leave because of the violence. Unfortunately, the ESE students do have different precautions and exceptions that we have to deal with, and I understand that. And at times, I become inoculated to that. Personally, I've been punched, I've been bitten, I've been fondled, all as a teacher. We need to look at the discipline that we have in Pinellas County Schools and sit down and figure out a way that we can ensure that our staff and our students remain safe. We need to do this. It's imperative. Over the last 5 to 10 years, there have been multiple systems that have been put in place where referrals have been in different systems that are not all viewable. By using these multiple systems, parents and staff do not have the opportunity to know what we're working with, and that can become very dangerous. We have SROs on campus. We have safety protocols. We're an ESE center, or an EAS now center. All of that being said, we're very highly trained. I fear for my colleagues that are not in my center, that don't have the training that we have, that we recognize the dangers that we work with, and we have a very good system to prevent as much as we can. I ask the school board to please sit down with PCTA to work on a system that will better what we have and protect everyone involved, students and staff. Thank you.
Mark Lutho, Largo. Here's a photo of owls. One of them died. Are you still putting out those poison boxes for the rats? That's killing the owls. Yeah, doggone shame. As I said before, cause and effect. It's killing the planet. In New York, giving aging buildings a green makeover. Oldest structures to reduce their carbon footprints. They're doing retrofits, cutting the utility bill by 80%. And what are you doing? Making new buildings that are pieces of junk belching carbon. That new one up there at Clearwater High School, oriented the wrong way. Prototype what buildings should look like. Here's Florida-friendly landscaping celebrates 30 years. And I look at the landscaping around your schools. Oh, bad, very, very bad. And as I read before, carbon dioxide levels climb to yet another high. The situation is dire. And you could be doing something. You could make schools the right way. High performance, passive solar. But you just continue to ignore the science. Orient the building the right way. You do it the wrong way. What's wrong with you? It's so simple. The Anasazi Indians knew that over 1,500 years ago. It's malfeasance. That's what it is, malfeasance. You can't get orientation right?
Thank you. The next two speakers are Denise Lugo and Paula Stevens.
Hello again. My name is Paula Stevens, and I have been teaching for 25 years in elementary school, Title I's for Pinellas County Schools. I do want to say this year I am teaching Summer Bridge, third grade, and I'm very excited about the inventions that we're doing. With this week, the students are they're called OptiBots, and they're creating paths and stuff that the robots will use sensors for light, so they're drawing and designing courses and stuff, and it's very engaging, and the amount of materials and stuff that we have is definitely impressive and definitely ups that engagement level. So thank you for changing up some things for our students. It's interesting that Nancy Velarde was talking about student discipline. Summer Bridge is a very short program. It's only 4 weeks. We don't get a lot of information on our students unless teachers type in on their forms. I had a student last Thursday when we were out for recess that got very aggressive with another student. ended up having to remove my class away from this student, and the principal came out. Looking back, I wanted to know what I could have done differently as the educator, what I could have done differently to prevent this. Nothing on his sheet told me anything that there was ever any problems with this student. No special needs, no 504, no behavior plan. So I go into focus and I'm like, okay, maybe there's something in here. As a classroom teacher, I do not have access to any referral information on the screen. I can find out when they had their vaccination shots. I can look at parent contact information and find information there that may lead me. Some principals put in when they've processed a referral and talked to a parent in there, some do not. So there isn't a standard. This child, though, did have, and I had never seen it before. I know our ESE students have a little colored tag and our English language learners have a little green tag, but I saw it was a life preserver. I'm like, what's a life preserver? And it's a safety plan. But from my experience, safety plans are for students who have been bullied. This was a child who was aggressive towards other students and had a safety plan. Going back, there needs to be a system. There needs to be, I looked everywhere to see a list of codes. I can't find the list of codes. So it is something that does need to be updated, and your teachers do need to be informed. Thank you.
Good evening, school board members. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this evening for the allotted 2 minutes and 53. My name is Denise Lugo. I am with the National League of Conservation Voters. It is the oldest serving environmental organization in the country. And we are here with a number of our members in the back of the room of the Chispa, Florida program, simply to thank you for being leaders in the region, specifically around what you're doing to replace the diesel school buses with the electric school buses. So we wanted to take this time. We've been meeting with a number of school board districts in the I-4 corridor, and of all of the school board districts that we have met with, we know that you are much further ahead in protecting not just the quality of our air, but the quality of our children's lungs and the quality of our bus drivers' lungs. We are also here to particularly thank both school board members Eileen Long and Caprice Edmond for giving us an ear and allowing us to speak with you individually about our concerns. And we were happy to find out that you were all much further ahead, so thank you for that. And lastly, because I'm not a woman of many, many words, I would like to encourage the school board district, if you haven't already done so, to please make use of the application for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. It's my understanding that they have another round of $300 million, of which the EPA Region 4, which is where we are located, has received the largest allotment of over $59 million. So in addition to what you're already doing and the funding that you're already receiving, there's another opportunity to offset your costs by applying for this grant that is scheduled to, the deadline is scheduled to close on August the 22nd. So there's a bit of time if you haven't already applied. And we also understand that in the fall, there's going to be another bite at that apple, no pun intended, but bite at that apple to apply for tax rebates, which may offset not just the electric school buses, but also the infrastructure that goes with it. So with 54 seconds to spare, I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
The next two speakers are Eliseo Santana and Lindsay Blankenbaker.
Mr. Santana has been kind enough to let me go first. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed watching the video highlighting our valedictorian speeches from our this year's graduating classes. As a former high school teacher, I really miss working with the kids. And it's so encouraging to see such wisdom and such resilience and such hope in these young leaders. I really feel that they can inspire those of us elders who are very deeply worried about the future of our state and the future of our schools. I definitely agree. Pinellas Schools, here in Pinellas Schools, we have much to be proud of. But I am concerned about a number of things that are plaguing our state and are unfortunately creeping into our schools. Nancy already spoke about our grievance on student discipline and the record system. I am very deeply concerned about the violence in our schools. It's disheartening to know that we agree that there is a grievous problem regarding student attacks on teachers, that we even agree on broad solutions to help fix this problem, but that we can't agree to work together. From my end, seemingly, because the solution has been brought or proposed by us, your educators' unions. That is disheartening to me. We are worried about the hate in our communities. There is an uptick of violence and outright bigotry in our communities, in our laws, that are, again, threatening to creep into our classrooms. Lest we get too comfortable and content in our decorum and our procedures here, I want to tell you what I saw in Hernando County when we went up to, in a solidarity action with the Hernando County Teachers Union just a couple of weeks ago. I saw Proud Boys standing shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, in solidarity with the Hernando chapter of Moms for Liberty, two groups that have been declared hate groups by the Southern Poverty Law Center. I saw Nazi salutes given following public comments, walking right back up the aisle. I saw an open condemnation of the presence of gays in the building, including such extremely eloquent student speakers. I heard an elected school board member denouncing equity and inclusion in their schools with a commitment to remove it from their schools. Best case scenario, she didn't know what she was talking about. She didn't know who she was talking about. Worst case scenario is she did. And while that experience made me thankful for what we have here, the generally respectful and the generally collaborative way that we try very much to work together, it also reminded me that that kind of a circus can come here very easily. We have to take that as a warning of what can spread to our schools and stand up, speak out, and stop it. I want to encourage you to cultivate that kind of environment that invites educators to stay, to cultivate the kind of leadership in your administrators that makes this a welcome place for educators so that we can keep them in front of our students. That's what will keep our students in our school.
My name is Eliseo Santana, and many of you know me. I wanted to say, first of all, that standing here before you and being able to speak, I feel so proud and honored, as a veteran, having served our country to maintain our republic, to be strong, and our democracy, to be active. It just brings chills into my ability as a citizen to be before you and to speak is something that I cherish. And I want to thank all you for the service that you do. I want to say that before I got here, I was able to meet with the police chief for our schools, and I was thanking him because let me rephrase that. 11 of my 13 grandchildren will be in our public schools starting this year. The youngest one is going to pre-kindergarten in Dunedin Elementary, and the oldest one is a senior in Dunedin High. And so their safety is in all of our hands, and their education and preparedness for the future I entrust in your hands. And I thank some of the board members for having reached out and to talk to me individually, and those that have not, I will be reaching out soon to be able to have that conversation. I represent a large sector of the community that normally don't feel welcome, not because of anything you're doing, but it's just a natural thing of not feeling welcome and not having trust, and they don't participate in our processes. But I will let you know that we are here. We are looking at the things that you do, and we're going to start contributing by sharing those experiences that we have so that you can do a better job of representing us. because that is what democracy is. That's what a republic is about. And it requires all of us to speak and to participate. And I am speaking now on behalf of Chispa. We're going to make our effort to be out here and to let the community speak. I thank you.
The next two speakers are Tracy McConnell and Daniel Amend.
Hello. It's been 6 years since I sat on my sofa after a long day scrolling Facebook and saw security camera footage released to the media of my husband being tackled from behind and knocked headfirst into the lockers at Seminole Middle. This was one of the most difficult things I have ever watched. Imagine seeing the moment in time when your loved one was assaulted. Then about 4 years ago at Pinellas Central, we had an administrator there named Daphne Miles, and under her watch, we had a lot of teachers who were either assaulted or afraid to be at school. They filled out intent to remove forms. I was on the intent to remove committee where our MTSS coach at the time said all teachers should expect to be hit. I spoke up then as I do now. Teachers, just like everyone else, deserve to be safe at work. One veteran teacher even resigned because she was so afraid to be around a student. That was a long, rough year at our school. Thankfully, we have an administrator who does her best to keep staff and students safe. I went to the events where we could meet the candidates for superintendent. I asked Kevin, as well as the other two candidates, how they were going to keep teachers safe from students with extreme behaviors. One of the things that was brought up was proper placement of students. I want to tell you the process to get students help is clunky. It takes forever. I have seen it take well over a year to get a student services. In the meantime, teachers and students aren't safe. Not to mention, how can anyone learn when they're afraid? We are all in this together. Administrators are being assaulted too. Not much has changed since my husband was knocked into those lockers. So my question to Kevin and the board today is, what are you going to do to ensure the safety of our employees? Please start making sure that there are real consequences given for behavior at all levels. We're not preparing our students for life after school. If kids are experiencing trauma, then get them the help they need. The classroom should not be jail's waiting room. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to change the topic. It seems like you guys do have a problem with violence. I'm down the street from Seminole Middle, and I hear this all the time. What is going on, man? I hear the teachers talking. I was here the last couple meetings, but there's so many people I couldn't get to talk. Well, they were out in force. Apparently the memo didn't go out this time. With regard to extremists that come talking about banning books and curriculum and all that, as just a regular guy, it wasn't too long ago that the left wanted to ban The Adventures of Huck Finn and To Kill a Mockingbird for objectionable words. And I get that. I'm not sure if that needs to be in school necessarily. I don't have a problem with it per se, given the context. But you can get those books anywhere in any regular library. If you want to stop the nutcases from coming to people that you disagree with, when adults share sexually explicit material, it's a crime. It's immoral, it's stupid, it's deviant, it's all that. And it doesn't matter what stripe it is, whether it's hetero or homo or whatever, it just doesn't belong. It doesn't belong in a school. So if that stops, you get the extremists on both sides to go away, because we all agree that that doesn't belong in school. But I think you guys do have a bigger problem at this point with the violence, and that's been going on since I was in school. And Seminole hasn't gotten any better. Apparently, in St. Pete, you guys have a big problem. Back in the old days, you just used a referral, you got your butt whacked, or you got a detail down at the SVEC, and you spent 3 hours raking up cow poop. Maybe time to bring that back. It's not cured me of my problem. Just saying. Something to consider.
The next speaker is Donna Grace.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Donna Grace, and I'm a former educator, and I'm concerned about some of the things that I've been reading about what's happening with Florida schools. And one thing is DeSantis's idea that it's important to get rid of all of the superintendents and replace them with people that he likes. I read an alarming statistic that 67 counties in Florida, out of 67 counties, 61 have a new superintendent in the last 4 years. That's really an amazing statistic, and I think that I don't know how much that has to do with DeSantis, and I don't know if we still have good people that are, I know we still have some people that are retained in the schools and are still doing a good job, but it's very concerning. DeSantis's laws are ruining the education system in Florida. They will scare off good people from trying to come to get a job here. I can't imagine a family deciding that they want to come here and bring their kids here to go to school because of the scary things that they're reading about what's happening in the curriculum. It's not the only reason teachers are not wanting to come back. They also are not wanting to stay in schools, and it's not the only reason that teachers are leaving the field. There's a problem with the violence in schools. Teachers and staff are quitting because there's other things they can do that won't get them hurt. I think it's a very serious problem, and I hope that you can figure out something to do about it. I read another statistic that said that Mr. Hendrick was started his tenure here in 2022 as superintendent, and that the board said at that time that they valued diversity. I'm really hopeful that that is consistent with what's happening here and that we don't turn into something that's just a DeSantis stamp, because I'm afraid of what's happening with that, and I think that you have a chance to do something and stand up for what you believe in. And if you believe in diversity, yay, good for you. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, there are no more speakers.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.